Hello, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening from wherever you're joining in the world. And welcome back to what is already the second day of Big Data Days 2024. Yesterday, we already had a full day program packed with sessions, a lot of new insights, but as always, we're saving the best for the second day. So it's my great pleasure to introduce to you the program for our second day of Big Data Days. And in the next few minutes, I will first run you through some of the logistics of this conference before we're going to be looking at our keynote's opening speaker for today, which is Dylan, who's already here with us right this morning. Good. Let me get started with a few elements of the logistics. So as per normal, and if you've joined yesterday, you might already know this, we will have a two-track session with different sessions hosted simultaneously. My name is Jan-Willem Middelburg, and I'm the author of the Enterprise Big Data Framework, and it's my pleasure to host this conference again for the fifth year in a row right now. My colleague John will be on track number 2 and will be guiding the other sessions in the other track. So every hour you will need to make a difficult choice which session you're going to attend. And we have some of the greatest and brightest minds in the industry joining Big Data Days 2024. 28 different speakers ranging from all across the planet, from the United States of America to New Zealand and almost every country in between. This program will run for 2 consecutive days, and we've timed it in the middle time zone. So throughout the different days, plan and bookmark all of your different sessions. As you know, participation in this event is completely free. And that would not be possible without the generous support of our partners, which are all listed here on this slide. I'd like everyone to take a moment to appreciate this and give a virtual shout out to all of the sponsors who make this event possible, and without whose generous support, we would not be able to do this. Then let me give you a few overview of the platform and the way that you can interact and engage with us during this virtual conference. The Zoho platform that we're using to host this session is quite interactive. You might have already seen some of the social sharing buttons, and if you want to interact with us during any of the sessions, there are a variety of different ways to do that. First of all, on the right-hand side, you see the chat box, and there you can ask questions or comment on specific elements throughout every session. If you would like to engage with the speakers, then I do encourage you to use the Q&A and questions box, which you see on the right-hand side. And there you can submit questions for speakers, and other participants can vote them up or vote them down to see which questions they would like to get answered at the end of the session. By joining live, you have a unique opportunity to converse and engage with some of the brightest minds in the big data industry. So I strongly encourage you to do that. That's one of the great benefits of being live. What's new this year, and you might see the animation on the screen, is that there's also a way to engage. So we will have a leaderboard at the end of the conference for maximum engagement. So if you comment a lot, interact, and converse with our speakers, then you will get points, and those points will ultimately lead towards prizes. Since this is a virtual conference, we really do appreciate it if you spread the word and attract new participants, maybe for next year. And if you do so, please use the hashtag BigDataDays2024. On the screen, you can also see all of the social media channels, including the website, the YouTube channel, where all the videos will be posted. And you can also join the conversation by joining on X or our LinkedIn platform under Big Data Framework. Good. A nice kind of free giveaway that we're giving to all active conference participants is that you will be able to receive a free 1-year membership towards the Enterprise Big Data Framework Alliance. This is the only year that we're offering this, and with the membership, you get access to a ton of resources, free books, videos, and a platform in the back end through which you can engage with other data professionals as well. In addition, the membership will give you 25% discounts on all the e-learning courses as well as the exam vouchers. So it's a great benefit that you could use in order to learn more about big data in the industry. Tomorrow morning, after the conference ended, based on your participation, you will receive an email with the voucher code, which allows you to activate this particular membership. So make use of that. Good. We're already at day number 2. And on the screen, I know it's in small font, I have the entire program for you. So once again, we will start today with an opening keynote, which is going to be done by Dylan, and we will have a closing keynote at the end of the day, which is done by Jordan Morrow, and who will close the conference this year for the 2nd time. In between, we have a centralized panel discussion in which we're going to be talking about citizen data scientists and the future of decision making. And in between that, we have the 2-track sessions in which, on the one hand side, you will have track 1 that is going to be hosted by me. And on the other side, you will see the other sessions which are going to be hosted by my colleague. So every hour, you need to make a choice and switch between the different rooms. So in order to follow specific individual sessions. Good. Then a last key point before I'm going to hand over towards Dylan, and that is that we do provide certificate of attendance for everyone who has been in the conference live. And I know that some people need this in order to claim points or justify their attendance. So if you would like to receive a certificate of participation, then please complete the QR code that you see here on the screen. There will be, once again, a number of different prizes that can be won during these days. I've already talked a little bit around it, but for those of you who might be joining today for the first time, I'm very briefly going to explain this. So first of all, I just already told you about the engagement. The top 3 attendees will get a free data literacy fundamentals course, and we will announce the winners at the end of the day. A second key prize is to win a free copy of one of the keynote speakers' book. This is the book Be Data Literate by Jordan. And during the closing keynote, which will be at the end of day European time zone, there is going to be a lucky draw of who will win this particular book. We also have a quiz during the conference to encourage everyone to be there for the full 2 days. And with 5 questions, we will once again select 3 lucky winners who will also get access to the course. Yesterday, we already did 3, so it's my great pleasure to introduce quiz number 4 this morning. And the question is, what is the estimated worth of the global big data and analytics market? So don't use ChatGPT because it does not have the answer, so you do need to make an educated guess. Let me launch the poll real quick. And you can start your voting right now. Good, I see a lot of people have found it already, so that's going. I'm going to keep this open for a few seconds. Good. 5 more seconds, and I'm going to close it. It doesn't happen often, but we have a tie between 254 billion and 274 billion. I'm going to be showcasing this answer together with all the answers from yesterday during the last and final quiz question. So I'm going to keep you in suspense for a little while longer. Good. Let me close this. And with that, I have the great pleasure to introduce our morning's keynote speaker. First time at Big Data Days, I would like to extend a very warm welcome to Dylan Anderson, who's the lead data strategy consultant at Redkite, and he is going to be talking about navigating the data ecosystem. Dylan, it's such a great pleasure to have you with us here today. If you could start sharing your screen, then we can get started with your presentation.
Perfect. Thanks so much for the introduction. Definitely super excited for all the great talks later today. And I've seen quite a few people of those talk before, and they really are great in their field and lovely to listen to. So my name's Dylan. I'll do a brief introduction and then I'll kind of dig into the presentation. So really looking forward to talking today about navigating the data ecosystem. I'm a lead data strategy consultant at Redkite, which is owned by Accenture, which is a proud sponsor of this event. And I've been in consulting for my entire career, so 10 plus years. And a lot of that has been in the data world. So I straddle the two worlds of business and strategy. Most of my consulting experience has been in the strategy business realm, but I since moved to data and I've coded in R for about 10 years. And that experience has taught me how different those two worlds are and how siloed they often are. And how even as an industry as big as data, as growing as fast as data, it's hard to grasp what it actually means to derive value for an organization. And within that, we have the lovely data ecosystem, which is something I've been talking about now for quite a few months now, about how hard it is to navigate that data ecosystem. So I'm going to start you off with a very philosophical and dense topic to start your day here at the conference day. And depending on whether it's morning, evening, or afternoon, hopefully it's not too much for your morning, because it's morning for me. Great. So to dig in, navigating the data ecosystem. My perspective, having worked with big clients across the world, often billion-dollar organizations with huge data teams, is our industry is doing very well, but it's pretty messed up as well. I mean, you traverse data LinkedIn for 10 minutes and you'll find a list of issues and problems that keep popping up. And these are not new. Poor data quality, high cost, poor ROI, unrealistic requests and timelines. That's been happening for ages. But even though everyone kind of posts solutions and talks about how they figured it out, no one quite has. And every organization that I see has the same litany of problems over and over in a different kind of guise. And data is not going anywhere. I mean, this stat has nothing to do with the poll, so don't use it. But the thing I want to call it here is the data analytics market size is growing exponentially, and it's going to keep growing that way, especially with the introduction of AI and the fact that every organization is looking to do something in this space. And we are building dashboards, automated tools, machine learning applications, AI products, and those things are ongoing, and it's great outputs that organizations are seeking value from and finding value from. So data is definitely not going anywhere, but there's more and more players offering solutions too. Like this was sent out by Matt Turk a month ago or two, of all the different companies offering solutions. And it's just impossible to kind of keep your head on top of all these things with the growing industry and all the different providers and solutions. There's so much going on in data, and it's hard to kind of grasp what we want to do about it, how we can navigate it, how we can actually derive value from it. So that's kind of what this talk is about. So given data is growing so much, is it a time for celebration because we're killing it? It's good, things are well. Or are we just super confused and just carry on delivering things because it's delivering value, but wondering when it gets better? That classic age-old saying of like, the grass is greener on the other side. Are we waiting for the grass to be greener on the other side with the advent of AI? I don't know. I don't think so. Because in my mind, this is not about, these problems are not new, and we are not tackling them in a way that is constructive. So these are symptoms of a greater root cause issue. So if you look at this, poor data quality can be responsible. Source data can be responsible for that. No governance can be responsible. Poor infrastructure technology, inability to integrate data sources. Again, poor engineering or no data model. That tends to happen as well. All of these different kind of symptoms and problems that people talk about, they're not actual root causes of the problems. They're the output of the problems. But we tend to tackle them as an industry as symptoms. And we don't deal with the root underlying issues that actually create these problems over and over again. Instead, we kind of travel on forward and do these kind of short-term fixes. What's the overall problem then? What am I talking about here? In my mind is a lack of overarching context. If we look at this, look how many different domains and aspects of data there are. I mean, you have the data foundations, like the governance, assets, and architecture. You have strategic direction. You have the data analytics, which everyone loves to talk about. Sorry, something popped up my screen and ruined that. The data management side, data platform. There's so many different parts of the data ecosystem, and it's hard to keep it all in your head. And no one really does, and no one can. And so what you have is we have issues of everything being separated and siloed within data. We talk about data being siloed within the organization. Yes, that is super huge. But even within data, especially when you get into big organizations with 200, 500 person data teams, you get silos within the data outfit. So what you get is all these symptoms at the bottom here, and the root causes coming from multiple domains. So for example, let's track poor data quality, because that's something everyone talks about. There's different arrows coming from the data platform and different data management, and probably an arrow coming, there probably should be an arrow coming from data analytics too, leading to poor data quality. But the nature of data leads us to these common symptoms because root causes exist across the ecosystem, and we don't tackle it from a holistic perspective. So before I get into more of that kind of solutioning and such, I do want to say, what is an ecosystem and why am I obsessed with that word? So an ecosystem is a geographic area where plants, animals, and other organisms, along with weather and landscapes, interact to create a bubble of life. Basically, everything grows and interacts with one another. And it's a network of complex relationships where things evolve and rely on one another to exist. There's your brief science lesson for a little bit. And I'm not talking about a landscape. We talk about the data landscape, and that is just a static view. It's a picture. It's your background on your computer right now. An ecosystem is more about the complex environment around it, interacting and relying on each other. It's not the, here's what we have, here's what it is. So something I spent months on and a lot of time doing is trying to map everything within the data ecosystem on one page. This is my current attempt. I've already looked to evolve it and change it as we go. But what we have is a complex intertwine of many different spheres of the data ecosystem. So for example, you have to start with the business drivers. What is actually the reason for being? What is the strategy? What's the investment we're getting? What are the business needs? What's the underlying org structure and operating model? That feeds into kind of the overall philosophy, which we see the data mesh or lakehouse approach or whatever, and some data use cases. And you need to get stakeholder alignment along the way. This feeds into the data lifecycle, which is where often people focus. They focus here and here only. Data lifecycle, again, there's many representations of this, but essentially from data sourcing to having the platform integration considerations like enterprise architecture or security and privacy, and then consumption by the business via tools, dashboards, what have you. This needs to be all underpinned by governance, management, contracts, data, team management, etc. And that kind of look is what most people focus on with the data, although I'll be at a siloed basis in a lot of ways. This then leads to business decisioning. So when everyone says, oh, we need to deliver business value, this is the business value. So what is the visualizations, dashboards, self-service reporting that people are getting to make better decisions? And what's the literacy and culture within the organization to underpin that? Two other things that we have here is the surrounding influences. So what else is happening within the data market and whether that be new technology or building versus buying debates and the role of data tools. The other one is data detractors. So what is detracting from companies to invest in this realm? So let's think about tech debt or investment costs or change management and transformation. All these things kind of detract from this stuff, although it's necessary to do and necessary to discuss. I also want to call out on the right-hand side that when people and companies talk about the data ecosystem, they talk about a technology ecosystem. So going back to this is not your technology ecosystem. And if you look up data ecosystem on the internet, unless my SEO skills have overrun all the big companies, it is really about your technology ecosystem, which is not the true data ecosystem that we live every day. Think about what we do. It's all about the people, the processes, and such. And that's why this kind of representation is a bit more holistic and contextual than just the technology sphere. So what? So as a consultant, I always ask the so what. I get it. You like ecosystems. Who cares? What's the impact of not thinking holistically? And some realish modified quotes to support that. So data is a black box. No one understands what the data department does. Symptoms have multiple sources, so they don't know. People don't know where to start to fix all these things. They just kind of like, oh, it happens. What am I going to do about it? Oh, well. Groupthink, we've always done it this way in engineering. Why would we change that? Because analytics thinks they could do it better, or it's better for them. That kind of groupthink model, it creates siloed views from the organization, and people butt heads a lot. Again, going to siloed perspectives. We don't understand how the technology should integrate because we work with this one and we don't work with that one, and we don't know what they're thinking. That is a huge problem within big organizations, especially when you're talking about big technologies like ERP systems, CRM, or data platforms. Too many cooks in the kitchen. Some organizations love consensus, but they do consensus to the bitter end, and it waters down the solution, and it makes it very hard to actually have a resolution because no one person understands that what they should understand from a technological perspective as well as the business perspective. And inhibits the direction of data. So this is a kind of culmination of all the other things, right? But because there's so many things happening and we don't have a bird's eye view on it, we really can't move forward with some of these things. So I'm not here to just talk about the problems because then I wouldn't be a good consultant, right? So what are some solutions to do this? First, some solutions that won't work. So a CDO and head of data analytics, people often hire for this solution, but it's just too much on one person, too much on their plate, and a single point of leadership often doesn't have the expertise and connection to do these things. Technology solutions or AI, well, we looked at that Matt Turk mad landscape, and there's too much out there. It's too hard to understand what you need, and it lacks process requirement, and it takes time to adopt for a lot of these solutions. Finally, hiring a consulting firm. I shouldn't be saying this, I guess, because I am a consultant, but it's an expensive option. It's a budget for separate projects, and you need to know how to internalize the knowledge within the organization. I'm not saying hiring consultants is a bad thing, but to solve for this, you need to have some internal aspects to do that. So what are solutions that will work? So when it comes to head of and leadership, having distributed the leadership model, and I'll dive into more of these in more detail, so I'm going to quickly go over them. So a distributed leadership model, technology and solutions, instead of that, a functional operating model. And then on the last side, the right training and knowledge to underpin and support your data team, empower them to do these things properly. So what are these right solutions? Well, data requires clearly defined input from multiple domain leaders. You need that expertise across the sphere. Also, a poorly defined org structure model will overwhelm even the best data professionals. So I see it within every organization I go to that the biggest problem is their org structure and poor operating model. And then finally, professionals don't have the training they need to succeed with this complexity. They're trained as technical experts, but not trained to deal with the overwhelming business requirements and business kind of organization that really should underpin what they do on a daily basis and helps them succeed and get to that next level. So diving into these, distributed data leadership. It's not a radical idea. So a lot of companies do this already, but data really requires clearly defined input from across domain leaders. Because realistically, that unicorn doesn't exist. It's a donkey with a horn, or a plunger in this case, on its head. People have significant gaps in data knowledge, or they lack business acumen. And even if they are real unicorns, good luck getting them. Like, they will choose an organization that's well set up for what they want to do, rather than an organization that's falling apart with lots of holes in it. And say you do hire it, that unicorn is only one person. They only have so many hours in a day. They can only do so much. So what's a distributed data leadership model? So having that CDO, head of data analytics, I still think they should exist. So being able to coordinate with them and other execs and focus on the business context and driving that home at an executive level. But then having data domain SMEs, so directors, heads of, who are technical leads of each data domain and have the expertise to do that decision making, but have the line of sight to that CDO, head of, and have support from them in the executive. So this is still fairly common with a lot of models, hopefully. But then also having the business sponsors and representatives involved. So involving them in roadmap decisioning, prioritization of tasks, and enough input on the direction. This is where things start to fall apart in large organizations, because they have their own jobs and they don't see it as necessary to bring them into those discussions. Then clear accountabilities across teams, making sure that people know what they're doing, know their lane, and are coordinating with one another to where necessary. And this can include forums and different other methods of process documents to get people working with one another. And then finally, data forums and working groups, as I mentioned. This should include junior team members. Often we leave it too much on, oh, the CDO does everything or the head of does everything, and they're just strapped for time and they can't oversee everything. We don't give enough leadership to technical people and ICs. And this kind of goes into what I will talk about in a little bit about giving them the right knowledge and backing and training. Also, just to note, I will definitely get to the questions because these are great questions. I'll just get to that at the end because I think I'll have some time on the back end. So if there's any other questions, feel free to chime in and such. The next solution, functional operating model. So again, I mentioned this is the biggest problem I see in organizations. So a poorly constructed org structure or operating model means no senior data sponsor for laying power, confusing reporting structure, no communication channels, data teams are misaligned, no roles linking together domains and teams. So how should it be built? It should be built in a way where data supports the business in a cohesive manner, not just as, oh, we need to do data right now, let's put it onto the side. So step one, what's an org structure model with data in mind? So how can we kind of make it more of a horizontal view instead of a vertical view that sits outside of domains, horizontally supporting, say, marketing, finance, et cetera? How can data be that foundation that other business domains can rely on? And then how do the domains feed into that? So what do the domains own? How do they individually support the business? And this is within data. What are those domain accountabilities? Right now I'm working with a client and they've got a great data team, one of the best I've seen of all my clients, but they're doing so well in all their different domains, but they don't know how to connect. They don't know how things need to work together and who owns what. And therefore it's leading to inefficiencies and duplication of effort, which I'm sure everyone on the call has experienced before at some point. Step 3 is considering the domain interdependencies. So how do they coalesce? How does platform need governance? Because it does. Or how does analytics help shape what we do from an engineering perspective? These conversations are starting to happen, but they're starting to happen from we need an analytics engineer. Let's go hire that person. It's not happening from having the conversations and actually building up the org structure and op model from that perspective. Finally, establishing the ways of working with the business. Business wants to use data. I have not talked to a business team that doesn't, but they don't know how. And getting in on that is mostly based off of personal relationships and like informal connections. That is a problem. How are you going to actually install change as a leader, as an organization, if you don't establish that ways of working between the two groups? Because otherwise they're not going to talk to each other and everyone is focused on their lane and everyone's always super busy. So no one has time to kind of forge out these relationships unless they're super interested in gung-ho. So the last one is the right training and knowledge. So data professionals don't have the training they need to succeed with this complexity, and the materials don't exist to understand it. So one, I think you've heard a bunch of these things before, but one, stop focusing on technical skills. The only training we offer, I see individual contributors and like data professionals is Okay, upgrade your SQL, upgrade your Python. That doesn't really help them when they're 3-5 years into their career and working more about managing people and doing that. Second one is bring together cross-domain thinking. As I mentioned, what does a data engineer need to know about? They should know about data security and governance and platform architecture potentially. They don't need to know a ton, but they should know what they need to know to help succeed in their job and to do things better than just straight line building pipelines. Train people to grow, not excel in junior IC roles. Again, training we do is get better at doing this technical software. It's not how do you lead from a technical perspective. I've met many heads of data who are so technical, they just have no idea how to think outside their lane. And it's not their fault. It's just they have been brought up in the way that what's focused for them is to do really good coding and to do really good data stuff, not to build great teams and build good solutions. Finally, the last two are learn the basics of other relevant domains. So it kind of feeds into bringing together cross-domain thinking, but actually learning about what's out there and how do you do that, and coordinating with people in those domains to understand what they do on a daily basis. And that facilitation doesn't happen. It just doesn't. And then the last one is sign up for my newsletter, because that is what I'm talking about. And the reason why I think, this is my second last page, and I'll get to questions. The reason why I started this newsletter is because I'm a data strategist. So my goal is to kind of form the strategy of how to set up a data office or a data team and deliver on the business needs and solutions. What I found working with my clients is, look, they're all gung-ho about data strategy. They're all super focused on building a great team, solutions, and to do all these amazing things. And the business is really keen to have them, but they just don't have the overarching context to do it in a way that is efficient, cohesive, and sustainable. And so what you get is all these issues and all these problems. And I realize I love data strategy, but data strategy can't fix this. It's not a data strategy problem. It's a data ecosystem problem. We don't understand the ecosystem as data professionals. We think too much within our domains, and that will be an issue, and that will kind of impede our progress. Hence the data ecosystem newsletter, which talk about a bit on the next page, but I started this newsletter. Really, I'm going to go and try to explain every part of the data ecosystem 1 week at a time. So I'm 5 issues in, and it really is about kind of shedding light on how, for example, data engineering connects to different domains, why it's important, why you have to do it. So that Cole's notes, that Cliff's notes on what you need to know about each domain part of the data ecosystem. Other parts, feel free to follow me on LinkedIn, which a few of you probably already have. Subscribe to my newsletter. Medium, I'm starting to do some content, but haven't done much there. So the newsletter and LinkedIn are the main 2 things where you can follow me if you're interested. I want to get to questions because there are some really good ones. So I'm going to zing through them, but I appreciate and hope you enjoyed that talk. And feel free to add on the questions or shoot me a message on any of those platforms. So
thank you so much, Dylan. That was excellent. And I think it gives us a good way in which we can navigate this ecosystem a little bit more in detail. I did indeed see a lot of questions come in. So we have 7 so far. So I don't know if we have time to answer all of them so far. But what I will do is I will moderate some of the most popular ones. So for everyone who's listening live, you can still upvote or downvote the questions as we will go along. I'm gonna start with a question from Katina, which I'm gonna project on the screen right now, and she's asking, what are the key challenges in implementing a distributed data model, and how can organizations overcome them?
I think the biggest thing is finding the right resources. We hire for technical expertise in a lot of ways. Most CDO job applications tend to have, oh, you've worked for 10 years in Python. It's like, no, I haven't. But so finding the right person who can do everything is very tough. And then the next layer of that is the coordination between people at a senior level. Organizations love to lowball on some of these positions and don't realize that they really need people with this level of expertise who can coordinate and work across domain teams. So instead of hiring someone who understands how to navigate that kind of executive senior level area to do those things that I mentioned from a distributed data model perspective, they hire someone who can code really well and build solutions, but then that person ends up siloing themselves within their team. So that's the biggest thing is really laying out what you need as an organization from those leaders. And then the final thing of that is empowering and enabling your junior staff. I think people have a lot of problem or a lot of difficulty doing that because it's not an easy process. There needs to be some hand-holding. And especially with like technical experts, you need to show them how to navigate and work across the organization network to do those things. And that's no, I've never seen that really done well unless the person's a superstar and you got lucky that you hired them early on or something.
Yeah, good. I think that and should answer the question into a lot of detail. Let me then move to a question from Perry Chen. And the question here is, could the data ecosystem management be covered by the DG or EA team, I think enterprise architecture team? If not, which area or team in data space needs to work in this new area?
Yeah, Perry and I have actually discussed this a little bit too offline, but it's a great question. Enterprise architecture, I think, is one area that's quite underfunded across most teams. One reason is because there really isn't a home for them. I think a good enterprise architecture team or outfit would really help facilitate a lot of this. But the problem is I think enterprise architecture as a domain has become very technical. And it doesn't consider, usually enterprise architecture for reference has like business architecture, technical architecture, data architecture, and another part of platform art. I don't know, but it has those domains under, but right now it's very focused on technical architecture in most organizations. Yeah. So it doesn't quite encompass everything it should, although a proper TOGAF trained enterprise architect should be able to help facilitate that. The data governance team, again, definitely should be a key part of that because they are the ones who latch together the business and the data teams. But again, in a similar sphere as the enterprise architecture team, data governance in a lot of organizations has become a data management team or a data privacy and compliance team. And that is a huge issue because you're stepping away from data governance enabling the business to use data effectively into data governance managing how people use data to make sure they comply with regulations and stuff. And that's not the purpose of it. So while I think those should be and could be covered, they aren't.
Yeah, correct. And also I think, or at least that's been my experience, is that people are always a little bit scared of the enterprise architecture team for whatever reason, because it's indeed on the more technology side of things. And that makes it sometimes a little bit, far from the day-to-day questions in the day-to-day business. So it's 100%. Like a stamp of approval.
Yeah, they've developed a terrifying reputation. Same with data governance. People are scared of them because, like, oh, did I do something wrong with the data?
Yeah, correct. Good. Let's move to a next one. I think another one is also quite good. I'm gonna project this one. Is what are some of the strategies for optimizing data management processes to reduce exorbitant costs? And I think the cost aspect is sometimes a little bit under appreciated. So I'm wondering what you think about that.
It's interesting. So another client that I'm working with, again, super advanced in every way, but they don't really have a strong data management foundation. And the one reason is every part of the data domain thinks it's not their problem, and they're leaning on data governance to solve it as well, as we were just talking about. And I think to make it more efficient, instead of hiring a bunch of MDM tooling or doing this, is lay out what you need from each part of the organization to make data management successful. In the end, I think I had it on like slide 2 or something like that. But data quality is your end goal of a strong data management system. And data quality is not, it's an output. And to kind of optimize for that, you need to know what goes into data quality, and that flows across the system. So really coordinating first with your platform, data governance team, your analytics team. How do we want to manage data, and how do we make sure that's done in an efficient way across the organization? So that coordination, I think, is the biggest part of the strategy. The other bit is, and this is often a very not a quick win, but should be done, is working with the business to improve data ingestion and data generation, because often data falls apart even before it's in the platform, and data management goes out the window, or you end up spending a lot more trying to fix the data that's already imperfect. So thinking about it from that perspective, that holistic perspective of what goes into data management, that's, I think, the best strategy to do it. And then setting the standards, buying the technology, putting the team against it, and potentially having like a SWAT team for data quality.
Good. Could I say a more end-to-end perspective? Would that kind of cover it?
Yeah, exactly.
Good. Then let's go to next question is going to come from Timothy, and he's asking, schools historically have been inconsistent with their use of data to drive, inform, and inspire decisions and innovation. Can you contextualize the solution in the context of institutions that do not have resources for data analytics but have manpower to mobilize but are quite busy with other tasks? So I think this question is moving a bit towards capacity, changing the house while you're still in operations.
Yeah, it's a tough one, right? Some organizations I work with have like a priority status, so it's a ticketing system where they do one after the other. The goal of a data strategy really is to prioritize those things. What is most important to actually driving business value, and how do you do that in a logical and cohesive way? And I think a lot of organizations are like, oh, we should do everyone's saying this right now. We should do AI, Gen AI. Let's do it. Let's set up a team. Let's do it. But like, they don't even have automated reporting or dashboards that the rest of the organization can use. And you can't build Gen AI off crappy data. And therefore you need that reporting, those dashboards to kind of then feed into that. So it's more of a, how do you prioritize what you need, and how do you tackle that in a logical way? So you don't need to, you can tackle that Gen AI if it's a high priority, but do it in a way where you're building to scale rather than building one-off solutions. And I think that's a big inconsistency that you see when building solutions. And that's why so many data projects fails, because they're not done from a perspective of, let's build this for 5 years out. It's more about, let's build this for tomorrow. And then 2 years later, you have tech debt on that solution.
So a little bit of a longer perspective and a longer term vision, I think, will help with that decision making part. Absolutely.
Yeah, and it also helps get buy-in from people who are building it, because then they see like the runway for like, okay, now I get why I'm building up to this. And because people get frustrated when they build things and they don't get used, right? And that often leads to churn and a pretty bad data culture.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for that. Then the next question, which I think is super interesting, is going to come from Ruby. And she's asking, where are we when it comes to formalizing standards in managing various aspects of the data ecosystems? So that's an interesting one.
Well, right now I'm on issue 5 of my newsletter, so we're that far in. I don't think we're that far, to be honest, but I think we are really, really far within each individual domain. From what I see, like, for example, if you look at DAMA and data management governance, they've got great standards for managing data and governing data. TOGAF, which I mentioned before, that's for enterprise architecture, data architecture, amazing standards, stuff like that. Data engineering, there's great books and expertise on that type of stuff. So I think we're really far within each domain. It just doesn't map across well. There's no kind of like high level summary that can be like, okay, how do these things kind of connect and interweave? And that's what we're missing, because data is so complex and it's getting even more complex. We're not taking those standards from a holistic view. We're taking them individually one at a time. And therefore, that's what's resulting in these inefficiencies and not solving these root causes. That's my perspective, at least.
Absolutely. So this is a question that I've been tackling myself also for quite some years, and it's basically also the methodology behind the development of enterprise big data framework, exactly because
of what you've been saying is it's so dispersed and there's not one uniform approach. So I personally believe a framework approach that tries to incorporate all of those best practices is probably the best way to go in future.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that.
Good. I think we still have time for one more question, so I'm going to choose the one with the most votes. Anthony is asking, what additional considerations do data engineers and analysts need to be aware of within a data ecosystem?
Yeah, it's a great question. For engineering, the domains that I think are underappreciated are data security, data governance, and actually analytics. So data security, how do we make sure these systems are secure and everything's secure and compliance, especially with compliance increasing? Data governance, how do we make sure that everything we do is linked to our business users getting data and getting data in a clear and high quality way? So what are those data governance principles? Who are the owners, stewards, et cetera, that we need to follow? And then analytics, how do we build these data assets and products in a way that our analysts can use them better, or our data scientists can use them better? And that's kind of a bit of a solution architecture perspective. From an analyst perspective, data engineering is one area. Data governance is another area. And then actually business strategy and business acumen. So engineering, understanding what the data is coming through and how it comes through. Understanding that process is really helpful for then designing your own solutions on the back end of that and making sure that they're scalable. Data governance and quality, again, it just kind of goes without saying. It's like you need to make sure you're taking in the right data and you keep it in that format, so you're not kind of creating new KPIs and metrics out of nowhere and then confusing the living hell out of everybody. And then finally, business acumen, that's the biggest one for analysts. If you don't understand how the business works, what the business model is, the solutions you build won't actually be used. So work with those stakeholders you're working with every day, from marketing and finance or HR, whoever it is, to make sure that you understand what they do, what they want, how what they do contributes to the business strategy. And then finally, after figuring all that out, then you can start talking about what data solutions they want. Because it's not about leading with data solutions. It's about leading with business value and then getting to the data solutions to put on top of that and form it from that.
It's kind of demystifying the complexity of it, isn't it?
That's really all it is. And I think as data professionals, we get thrown into things and we tackle it straight on. And sometimes we just have to take a step back and think like, okay, what does this actually look like? How complex is this? And that really helps you kind of recalibrate and understand how to do things a bit better.
Perfect. Good, Dylan. I could talk to you easily for another hour, but unfortunately we're getting towards the end of our session and we have already our next speakers waiting backstage. So before we say goodbye, I would like to thank you on behalf of everyone here at the Enterprise Big Data Framework Alliance for a wonderful opening keynote. I think you provided us with a lot of inspiration around how to really look differently at things. I see dozens of clapping hands, smiley faces, and things going on in the screen. So I'm quite sure that the audience agrees with me. So thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and insights with us during Big Data Days 2024. And definitely hope I will see you back again next year.
Perfect. No, thanks so much for having me. It was a great time. And yeah, I'm excited for some of these talks coming up.
Thank you so much. Speaking about upcoming talks, we already have our next two presenters waiting on the backstage of this virtual conference. In track number one, which is going to be my track, we have how I always like to refer to as Digital Commer, which is, I would say, presenting for the third time this year at Big Data Days. Paul is a senior technical trainer at AWS and a great communicator, storyteller. And he's going to host an 1.5-hour workshop around democratizing generative AI with Amazon Q and Amazon Bedrock. So that's going to be a hands-on, slightly more roll up your sleeves kind of session, which will follow the workshop format, meaning it's a longer duration session in which you can try to follow along with him and actually experience and learn on the go. And if you're looking to learn something very practical and new, then this is absolutely the session to go into. In track number 2, we also have a very gifted speaker all the way from the Netherlands, is Angelica Clida, who is a challenger and advisor at the Business Data Challengers. And she is going to be talking about harnessing data and AI literacy for transformative decision making. This will be a more regular 1-hour presentation, so that's a choice that you would need to make between either workshop or presentation. Both of them are absolutely, I've seen them both before, are absolutely great and gifted speakers. So I know it's a tough choice, but you will need to make a decision somewhere within the next 5 minutes. We're gonna meet again at the top of the hour, so take a quick break and we'll be back in 10 minutes from now. Thanks, everyone.